Mrs. Fish. Here. Dr. Katachi.
Here.
Mr. Gordon.
Here.
Dr. Gursky. Here. Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Kirsch.
Here.
Mr. Reichert.
Here.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Here. We had an executive session this evening to discuss personnel issues. And our next board meeting is July 22nd. That's our regular board meeting. We will then have a special board meeting August 12th. The board meeting on the 22nd will be held in the auditorium at the high school. Okay, at this time, I need a motion to accept the resignation of Dr. Dick Marks.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Here.
Mrs. Fish.
Yes.
Dr. Katachi.
Yes.
Mr. Gordon.
Yes.
Dr. Gursky. Mr. Huron.
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes.
Mr. Reichert.
Yes.
And Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. Okay, at this time, we will take nominations for vice president. Would anyone like to nominate someone to be vice president?
I will nominate Chris Huron.
Any other? Anyone else?
Just, we don't have anybody else, it's just a motion to close this formality and then
Have a motion to close nominations? Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Jen. And at this time, we need to vote for vice president. right? We have, we don't need the- So at this time, we'll vote to nominate, or to have Chris Huron be vice president. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Do I get my own gavel?
I just wanted an update. I don't see Mr. Johns in, oh, yes. Mr. Johns, do you want to come to the microphone and give us an update on the sports and athletics? Sure.
Yeah, I just want to give you a brief update on, we have started as of June 22nd, we started our voluntary summer activities and summer workouts for all of our sports. All students are screened, temperatures taken, we go through a checklist when they come. We haven't had any issues with any of our students, so far so good. Been socially distancing, been doing all the things that are in our plan. So just want to give you guys the update that that has been happening. And I know today the PNAA had a meeting, and they made the announcement that they are planning to go ahead with sports for the fall season on the same schedule. So that just came out this afternoon.
Thank you. The other piece of that is we did have families that have traveled to the identified states, and what we have done is follow the recommendations of Department of Health actually, for them to self-quarantine for the 14 days, so that we didn't have any issues with our sporting events.
This time we will have public comment, the maximum of 3 minutes for agenda items only. If you have public comment regarding something that is not on the agenda, please hold it until further into the meeting. We'll have another public comment. Any public comment?
I have a public comment for Clarissa Penna. Clarissa, you are now allowed to talk. Please unmute your microphone and give your name and address.
Clarissa, are you there?
Yep, there she goes.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, we're having some trouble hearing. Is there any way that we can increase the volume? Is that possible?
Our microphones are as loud as they go.
Okay, thank you.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
You may make your comment now.
I believe that was her comment. Anyone else have a comment? Please raise your hand in Zoom. All right, no, oh, hold on one second. Sarah Chang, please unmute your microphone and give your name.
Hi, yes. Yes, I'm here.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So I was just curious. I actually wanted to show up for this meeting. I'm just curious why it is that the people who are, you know, behind the desk who are presenting this, which is great that they're actually going out of the way to do this, but like they don't have masks on. Is that supposed to be a political statement?
No, it is not. We are following the guidelines at social distancing of 6 feet. It's not required to wear masks. That's why we have designed the room in the fashion we have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment? Please raise your hand.
We have one in the audience. Come up to the microphone, please.
This is about the proposed program. Should I wait until after you present it, or would you like to hear what I have to say beforehand?
If you have something to say on the agenda, now's the time, but you can also speak again for 3 minutes at the end if you wish. Just give us your name and address, please.
Hi, morning.
I'm not questioning. I'll touch my.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Shade. I live at 23 Brewery Hollow Road in Riverside. My comments are regarding the proposed plan. I don't know what it is, but I do have a couple of comments. Our children need to be in a classroom with their peers in front of the teacher on a consistent basis. I appreciate the situation that you're all faced with. I know it's a hard one. I know a lot of people feel very strongly, no matter where they stand on the issue, and I'm no exception. My daughter will start at the primary school in the fall in first grade. And so most of the comments I have are really directed towards elementary school kids, but I think they're broadly applicable. Parents aren't educators. Even given all of the tools, they're going to fall short. We're going to fall short. To think that we can do, parents can do what a teacher does, it's the height of hubris. I mean, it's just really degrading what a teacher does. I think a parent could do that. Education is more than just academics. How children handle social situations, how they interact with their peers. Referring back to the presentation made last month, obviously it's a concern. It's a concern that the school board wants to address, and I don't think that can be done anywhere else but in a classroom. School is a safe place. I did a little bit of research today, and in April, Childline logged 50% less calls in April of this year versus April of last year. Everyone knows that people are in a stressful situation. Child abuse isn't going down. Reporting it is. I've also did some research, and the number of ER visits for abused children have gone down, but the severity of those that have showed up have gone up. School is a safe place for kids. It's a place where they feel valued. It's a place where they feel safe, and at times it's a place where they're even fed. Some of the time those kids don't have those opportunities at home. And where are the kids going to go if they're not in school? Are they going to be at a daycare where they're exposed to other children? Are they going to be, with an older sibling who maybe isn't as experienced? Where are they going to be when they're not at school? Consistency is key. If they're not at school for 2 days a week, that's 40% of the education that they're not getting. And I'll finish it up. Alternatives already exist. Homeschooling already exists. Summer school already exists. And unfortunately, charter school exists too. There are opportunities for children who cannot show up to school for health reasons, whose parents don't feel that it's safe for them to be there. Those alternatives already exist. Let the children who need to be in school be there on a consistent basis, getting the education that they need. We all need to put forth additional effort. I know it's a lot of effort. I know it's a lot of
You have
asking.
30 seconds, sorry.
I know it's a lot asking the teachers to do. I know it's a lot. Everybody has to step up. It's important. It's important for the kids. It's important for our future. It's important for their future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to speak?
There are no more Zoom public comments.
Out in the audience would like to speak?
Oh, I have a public comment on Zoom.
Okay.
Mr. Merchant, go ahead. Unmute your microphone.
Is it unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes. Please state
Okay.
your name and address.
My address is 125 Wood Hill Road in Danville.
Thank you.
And one of the concerns we have in our household, because we have a child that you guys have done wonderful work on in your school district, who is a special education student, that would be our son Van. We've heard that the limited scheduling and the inability to be comfortable moving from classroom to classroom is going to limit his ability to interact in the mainstream. And I was just wondering if there were any comments that you could make regarding that.
I think we'll wait until we do the presentations, and then that information should be able to be covered there. If not, Mr. Merchant, you can ask again at the end of the board meeting.
Okay, that works for me. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Ben.
Any other people would like to make comments?
There are no, oh, well, hold on one second. We have another Zoom.
Okay.
Mensch, Laura Mensch. Go ahead, state your name and address. Unmute.
Laura and Jared Mensch, 102 Grub Hill Road in Danville. And just briefly, we wanted to say, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just briefly, we wanted to say that we agreed with the first comment, that we feel that the children, that you do an excellent job of keeping them safe, and that they aren't as susceptible to this as if they're not immunocompromised, and that we are 100% for sending the kids back to school, even if it means 2 days in, 1 day to clean, 2 days, that 1 day at home and then 2 days back, but that being social and having to gather in groups doesn't worry us personally, and that we think that the school would do an excellent job with the best that they could to make that happen as safely as they can. But we also appreciate that there are teachers that are at risk and appreciate that risk and understand that that is where some of the concern comes from. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other, like to make public comment?
We have another one in Zoom. It is Grace Showalter. Go ahead, state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Grace Showalter. I'm at 179 Valley West Road in Danville. And I saw today that Governor Wolf announced several statewide mandates, and I recognize that this is probably very short notice, but wondering if those mandates have been taken into account in the recommendations that you'll be providing.
Grace, we have taken seriously everything that comes down to us from the governor, from CDC, from the Department of Health, and even in our collaboration with Geisinger Medical Group. So we did watch that today, although we had our presentation pretty much done. I think what we've done already addresses the majority of what he has said.
Thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, our plan is very fluid. We're addressing things from very different angles and trying to be creative and making sure we provide what is needed for each family, not just a generic plan. So you'll see that in a few minutes.
All right, we don't have any more public comment in Zoom at this time.
Anyone in the public that here at the meeting would like to speak?
Okay, with no more public comment at this time, we will go ahead with the presentation.
And I'm going to stay at my seat only because the microphone's here, and I appreciate that. Can we have a PowerPoint broadcasting? Thank you. All right, we're calling this Learning Options for Reopening for our Danville Area School District. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for coming. I appreciate the interest that's out there on Zoom, YouTube, and in the room. We do want the community to hear what is said and work with us as we do this plan. As all of you know, the coronavirus has dramatically altered our daily routines, lifestyles, and expectations. In the past, every August, parents and students knew school was opening and things were going to be normal. Well, this year we're different. Tonight, the Danville Area School District leadership team is going to present the options and what to expect as we prepare to open school. Now, our actual plan will be voted on next week. So we have put some layers in here for you to view the plan and the other information that you'll hear tonight on the website. There is a new tab called Reopening. And in that, you will see a letter from me and various documents and also a survey. And I'll get to that in a minute, but I do really want everyone to complete that survey. And please let students know that they are also invited to complete this survey. The considerations that we have gone through, of course, have to do with health and safety practices, hygiene, social distancing, all those things. We're looking at the instructional formats that we will be using, masks, where and when, following CDC and Department of Health guidelines by the various rules to the greatest extent possible. You need to know that we are doing everything we can to mitigate any spread of the disease in our buildings and in our facilities. But the reality is we can mitigate to the greatest degree possible, but we are not capable of eliminating this disease. And unfortunately, we can just hope for a vaccine sooner than later. We also are addressing and taking very seriously the social and emotional well-being of our students. The speaker that was here in the room talked about what is happening with students and how districts, teachers, to be honest with you, the teachers protect them in many ways and watch out for them. So our teachers are going to be trained with additional ways to notice and to support students in that social emotional well-being, much more than we've done in the past. We also have transportation and traffic that we're looking at. Definitely some concerns, and we have some ideas for parents how they can help us with that. Food services, they'll be getting their lunches and breakfast in the buildings. We have survey results, and I mentioned the survey. Those survey results will be brought back into consideration as of Monday or Tuesday, and to be presented next week on Wednesday. We've worked on the extracurricular activities, and that document is also posted on the website. And then we have these back to school options that the principals and the other leadership members will be talking about. We have what we call the back to school model, the bridge hybrid model, and then of course the distance learning. Change the slide, please. Here's what we're looking at for parent support. Each day we are asking parents to check and screen their child prior to sending them on the bus or bringing them to school. This is a must. We need the parents to know that it is extremely important, and that we really want that students that are exhibiting any symptoms, and we will be giving you the information you need as far as screening. But if they're exhibiting any of the symptoms, they must remain home and work through that process with us. You can call the nurse to get more information if you need. We ask parents to transport their children if possible, and even consider carpooling, because we know what kind of traffic happens at the primary and the middle schools. So that would be very supportive and helpful as well. We want to help educate the children on how to wear the mask properly and encourage them to do that when it is necessary. And again, the mention of the reopening tab at the top of the page on the website. That survey, I want to have it by Monday. I think I have it for 3:30 at the end time, so that I can look at that and work on it and get things together for Wednesday. Our draft reopening plans are now posted under that page. There's an elementary school option, a secondary school option, and a special education procedures page. These are going to be presented from our principals tonight. So I believe Mr. Snyder, are you first? Snover. Sorry about that mistake. Snover.
All right, good evening, everyone. And so you're going to hear from a number of us just running through the different options that we are preparing a plan for, as far as, depending on the circumstances, what a return to school will look like. So the first one here is called our back to school model, and this would be really more what you look at as the traditional students are back in the school program under a somewhat normal, although not exactly the way it used to be, schedule. So this option would have a total reopening option for students and staff, again, coming into the school, transporting in by car, bus, or at the middle school walking. This option does not eliminate the option for distance learning if that is what is in the best interest of the student and family. We will be utilizing the state guidelines for instructional hours as we start the school year. And for your reference, at the elementary level, the state requires us to have 900 instructional hours, and at the middle and high school, at the secondary level, 990 instructional hours. Keep in mind that doesn't mean total hours in school. They calculate purely instructional hours, that is time in the classroom spent getting instruction. The elementary schools under this plan would be open every day, Monday through Friday, based on the school district calendar. And the secondary school students would be in school 4 days of instruction, and 1 day all students would have virtual instruction unless this is changed by PA or county agencies. One way to make this somewhat workable is having flexible arrival and dismissal times. We recognize that getting students to and in and out of the school is challenging even under the best of circumstances. So we are certainly going to be flexible when it comes to the time we allow students to come into the building or exit the building without, calculating them as tardy. And that also will apply to the attendance policies. Again, we want to encourage families, if their child is exhibiting any symptoms or may potentially be ill, we don't want them to feel that they have to send the student to school to meet our attendance guidelines. So we're going to be very flexible with attendance, and with some of our, distance learning online options, we hope that we're going to be able to mitigate time out of school if this does occur. So again, that's just a very brief overview of what coming back to school on a, in the traditional sense would look like at the district.
I have a question. What's the reasoning behind elementary students going? What is the reasoning behind the elementary students going 5 days a week and the secondary students only going 4 days a week?
It's a great segue. So I think Mr. Wynn's going to explain that right now.
All right, Mr. Gordon and everybody else, this is hopefully to answer your question. So 4 days a week in instruction and 1 day at home for grades 6 through 12. And here's the rationale. It's going to provide a framework for virtual learning model for students and teachers. So in a situation that we would have to go into, and all students would have to be back home like we were in March, April, May, and June, we would just be able to pick up and continue and be able to go completely virtual. At that point, it'll keep students, it'll give them the ability just to continue where they were, teachers continue where they were, and we won't miss a beat, and students will be practicing virtual learning 1 day a week.
Mr. Wynn, would you pull the microphone closer to your mouth?
Sure. It also allows for flexibility for extended absences for COVID-related symptoms or other extenuating circumstances. So again, we have a student who is quarantined for 14 days. It'll allow teachers the opportunity to prepare for those lessons and have those students, again, work on those lessons that 1 day where they would be at home. It also provides opportunities for teachers and guidance counselors and intervention specialists to reach out to individual students and or groups regarding social and emotional wellness. That's something that we've been focusing on here, Mrs. Bovey in particular, with social emotional learning, really focusing on that. And I know it's been a topic that we've talked about here in the last, within the last school year. And then also in the event of mandated school closure, students would not be able to attend schools. Therefore, we will need to move students to the bridge model, which we'll talk about here in a second. Does that answer your question?
No. Okay, what that explains the 4 days. I want to know why the elementary school is going 5 and the 6 through 12 is only going 4. Why the difference? Why is it that why are there two different needs but two different groups?
Okay, so as we move here to the bridge model, again, I'll try and dive into this a little bit.
I don't know if I'm ready for bridge.
No, I'm not ready for bridge yet either. I would like that answer, the answer to my question.
So what I would say the answer right now is elementary, we looked at 5 days, number one, because of parents. I would say number one, parent piece of it all, making sure with younger kids, they're every day. However, the other option we look at there is if you have a kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth students that chooses to go to our bridge, okay? We are going to look at the opportunity of using our teachers to provide lessons, to do activities, to do all of that, where we think because it's a whole grade level, we can use 1 or 2 people to meet the needs of multiple kids at a grade level. And we can do that after hours. We think we would have to look at some kind of means, I should say, to meet their needs using our teachers beyond them. However, what we looked at, and we talked thoroughly through this, grades 6 through 12, is there are so many special different classes that need to be accounted for those students that would not be returning and meeting that need. And we can't have that ability and that flexibility to use everybody at different times of the day or after hours to do something. So it's that effectiveness of maximizing everything we can do. I think another big piece is, and I think a lot of parents are concerned, is what happens when or if we have to go that other model where we're home all the time. And I think one of the other piece that when we got through all of that we discussed was, gives us the opportunity to be prepared, to be ready on that day, using that day, it's a kind of a weekly, they're learning, they're doing virtual learning, they're prepared. Should it happen, we can go from 1 to whatever it would be. If it was every other day, or if we had to take kids and put them home the entire time, we're in a better position with our 6 through 12 students and all the different classes. And I think that's the goal when we go to this is, we don't want to provide something, we want to provide the ability for our middle and high school kids to get all the classes.
So it's
to have
an
access.
access issue, pretty much. Then.
We want everything to be able to happen.
Grades K through, grades K through 6 don't have, obviously, the elective, but 10, 11, and 12,
So-
have, right?
Grades K through 5, for the most part, those teachers are teaching one subject area. They're preparing for second grade ELA, second grade math. At the high school level, you have teachers who have 5, 6, 7 different classes they're preparing for on a daily basis with the same amount or more kids. And some of those elective teachers have well over 100 students, where a second grade teacher sees 20 to 22 students every single day. So to prepare lessons for 120 plus students, 6 to 7 different classes, preparing, roughly what we're looking at in the survey results, where about 20% of, we're estimating about 20% of parents might opt for this sort of option. If 20% at 600 plus students, you're talking about 130 students at the high school level. Those teachers are going to need to prepare lessons for those students. It's not a time off. At our curriculum meeting, we talked about this is not a time off. All students will be doing work during that day. It will be graded, materials will be graded. That's one of the faults I think we had with the plan in March, April, May. Things weren't necessarily graded. We're going to hold kids accountable. We can do flip learning during that time, and then back to the rationale, we can make all kinds of connections with kids during that time.
Additionally, it allows our teachers to continue to build their skills in digital learning because we were thrown into it in March. This will help us to better train and keep moving them forward in those skills.
I think too, that's the key there is in K to 5, and Mr. Gov, if you want to add anything, I'll bring you the microphone, is we really believe we can be creative in how we try and create math, ELA, OG, literacy, writing, all those activities using some of our teachers to do that. The difference is when you're looking at middle and high school, you have multiple certifications of things that we want to provide those lessons. That's what it comes down to. And I think we are all in support. We believe we all want 5 days for all levels, but we also want to meet the needs of the community. We want to see what is being said, and that's kind of, am I okay to?
I have a question.
I think that answers my question. And anybody else?
And if we only have 5 students at the high school level, maybe the 20% is wrong, because maybe that's a bad estimate. If 5 students at the high school prepare for this and they say, we want to be home, we can go to 5 days. But if it's 120, 130 students, we know we need to prepare for that. So we by all means would hope we could go 5 days a week, but in reality, it might end up being 120 to 130 kids per building.
I have a question. Does the size of the buildings factor into it as well? Are you able to better social distance at the elementary levels versus the high school levels because of our square footage?
No, in a lot of ways, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, when we're looking at class sizes in elementary, depending on how many kids come back, we've really spent time separating the desks, getting as close to 6 feet as possible in those situations. We've set up mock classrooms in here. What I can tell you is that for an elementary classroom, due to 6 feet, you are talking about desks and chairs and not much else in there. Materials for the teacher, some opportunity maybe for some other things with kids, but we really will look at that as being what we want to do K to 5 especially is keep that as much social distance with keeping the kids in the room. And I think a good point to make there is for anybody listening and anybody in the room is that the information Dr. Boyle stated about being on the website, when you go into the elementary option and the secondary option, it is very detailed in what back to school looks like for kids, how they enter the building, how they go to lunch, how they go to recess. All of that is in there. It's a lot of information on the back to school piece, and that is why we wanted to make sure it was posted and available and not just quickly gone over here and then parents couldn't view it for their own. So that is thoroughly posted and ready to go. Anything else before we go on the bridge?
Yeah, so I just have a couple of questions. Just to reiterate what I think I heard you guys talk about. Can we go back to the slide that says back to school? So if we're looking at 3 models and one of them is back to school, when I'm hearing back to school and elementary children have 5 consistent days of return to school, and high school students can socially distance for 4 of those 5 days, I have a genuine concern that back to school for grades 6 to 12 is not 5 days a week. I understand what you're saying with the teachers and the electives, but I know that we have planning periods. I know that we have opportunities for flipped learning in the classroom to get them ready to be practiced and ready to go if we have to go to virtual learning. I'm just concerned when we talked about social emotional learning supports on a Friday, it's very difficult, we've seen this spring, to engage children who are not in the building. And if Friday is being used as really good intervention pieces, to me, the face-to-face value of having those children there for the interventions, you can't replace that. The other thing I heard is if we're looking at 20% of children going, that's a large number. I agree that that's a significant challenge. Perhaps it's selecting teachers to lead virtual options for those children as opposed to having all children not come to school so teachers can prepare for that. For 20% of the children, as Kyle just said, that 80% would be at home without interactions with adults in a return back to school model. In the hybrid model, I understand it, right? Because that means you're not fully on site on school, but a flipped learning model in the classroom allows you to digitally teach those kids while they're in front of you and still provide face-to-face supports, which I believe a back-to-school model would be a proponent of. So I'm just looking, I think, for clarification.
I mean, at the secondary level, teachers are specifically certified. So for them to teach, you know, if there were a business teacher teaching math, it couldn't happen. You know, so
I'm not sure, Mr. Wynn, I don't know if I understand. I think you're trying to say something that I'm just not following. I believe it's me, not you.
well, you said you would have teachers teaching to students, so that 120 students. So you would pull them out of the classroom, have them teach the 120 students?
No, what I'm saying is that if all children can be in 4 days, what is so special about a 5th day to not allow them to be in the building? If they're already teaching those children.
If I'm a teacher, I have 7 different periods to prepare for, 7 different courses. At the primary and secondary, primary Liberty Valley level, we're preparing for 1 class.
But how is that different on the other 4 days?
Because now they're also preparing for those 120 students who are only doing online learning.
I would just challenge the administration team to think about how to make that happen without losing a day of school.
Yeah, I don't think 80% of our students should be penalized because they want to come to school.
And I think, and Dr. Boyle, by all means, jump in. What we wanted to do tonight was to make sure we presented kind of the various options we've been going through over and over again and what those challenges are. And I come back to, I believe this team is committed to the idea that we would love that idea of all kids coming back and meeting their needs. But I know I've been one of the biggest advocates in our meetings of saying, but let's make sure kids get as much of the Danville experience as possible. What does that look like? How do we make sure our kids get it and our teachers get it? And I think that is a big question, is that 4 to 5 days, and how do you make sure we're getting the maximum amount from kindergarten through 12th grade? And we kept coming back to that. What does that look like? You know, how do we plan for that? How do we make sure if a kid is taking all those courses, but they're at home, how do we make sure our teachers have the time and the kids have the time? So I think that is definitely a point we have to work through. And I think that's why we wanted to bring options to the table tonight.
So I have a question to clarify. I think what you're saying might contribute to your confusion. Is you're saying that this right now, if we were in a regular school model, they plan for that 5 days a week, but all the kids are present. They're now going to be asked to plan for those that are present and those that are staying home, is what you're saying. So you view that as double duty for our teachers. So to give them that day to be able to manage the kids that are not present for instruction and who are doing it virtually is what you're talking about.
Labs and activities will look different for a kid by himself. Labs and activities will look different for a kid that's at home by himself as opposed to the 80% of the kids who are in the
Right. So from a teacher perspective, it's not planning for 1, it's planning for 2 scenarios. Add to it, if you're a high school teacher, you're planning for 7. So it's really you're planning for 14 is what you're trying to compensate for. Okay.
Any other questions on that at this point? Okay.
John, I'm just going to make a quick comment here. Please understand that this is fluid. And we're planning for, our attempt is to plan for every scenario that might come up. So, you know, we do have a plan for 5 days a week, if that can be done. That's easy to talk about because that's what we can easily do. But we're actually looking at everything that could possibly come up. So it depends on the number of students and how things go across the state as to what we actually ultimately start with. Doesn't mean we can't go 30 days and switch to the other plan. It's not like this is one and done for the whole year.
And I guess my last comment I'll just reiterate is whether, I think some people will see an advantage, some may not, is I think the one huge worry for a lot of families is what if this happens again where we are forced to be home multiple days a week? Once we got through the importance of the certification and the classes, we kept coming back to is maybe it is a valuable tool for teachers and kids to be practicing that use of virtual learning 1 day a week, learn the accountability, learn the importance of how that works. It's part of the normal routine, so we're prepared for that piece. But I think that's also a view, you know, people are going to have different views on the value of that. Okay, the bridge model. And we have turned this has been a big discussion for our team of what this looks like. And this is, you know, what we are doing here is we are trying to listen to the families that we have heard from, that have either contacted one of the principals or Dr. Boyle, that are saying, we're just not sure, we're not sure where this option is. You know, what if we don't want to come back to school? So what we are looking at here, and again, this connects back to the return to school, is we want to provide families with an option to remain at home while still receiving our DASD course content delivered by our teachers. We want this to be a different version of school. Why we call it a bridge. This is the bridge between home and school. What we are saying here, and we want families to hear here, is we respect that families have the decision and they want their child's safety taken into consideration, and that families are looking for options right now. And the options that are out there are either cyber options or homeschool options. And in my conversations with families who are looking at that homeschool option, it's that piece of wanting our curriculum, wanting our activities, wanting that. We want to provide that, but we don't want, we think these are the families that are just saying, this is temporary. This is not a long-term homeschooling plan. This is, we just need to get through this. So what we want to say is we want to meet you there and we want to bridge this gap. We want to provide this information, and it allows us then to teach our courses, our content, our means, and when it's time to come back and they're comfortable, they're ready, which then is this third star. It's a more seamless transition between home and school. It allows those families to move back and forth, I shouldn't say forth, move back when they're ready. But at the same time, it also can be the other direction, vice versa. What if a situation occurs where a student has to be quarantined for 14 days and they need to be at home? We can then work them into the situation of creating lessons and activities so they're prepared and they're still part of their class. They're aligned to the courses we're teaching. And then this next line we have throughout our presentations is in the event of a mandated school closure, this option remained in place if they were already there. So students who are already in the bridge model, if we went full closure, this would become everybody's option anyway, so they would be part of that. So that is kind of why we call it a bridge. We think it's a great term of saying, listen, we know you want to be back with us, you want to be part of the Danville Area School District, you believe in the education here. We want to be that bridge and provide that for you so your kids are still connected to our district.
Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about the distance learning model, okay? And so I just don't want to confuse you between the distance and the hybrid bridge model. They are two separate scenarios that we would use with our students. In the distance learning model, we would continue enrollment of 6th through 12th grade students in our school district e-learning academy. That has been happening. That was established 7 or 8 years ago. That's something that's been going on. We usually average between 55 and 65 students between grades 6 through 12 on a regular school year, a pre-COVID school year. So that would be the setup. We would continue to enroll students, and we have students who are returning to that program, whether they're coming, they're moving into 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, 12th grade. So we already have students enrolled in that program. We still are making that option available to any one of our students going into 6th through 12th grade, as we have for 7 or 8 years in the distance learning setup. And again, that's a full-time enrollment. That course content is, we have a partnership with NEF, the National Education Foundation, and we work with Pearson and GradPoint is the online platform that we use for that. The next step is we have been looking into several different options and providers, and we're looking to expand and offer distance learning options for students in kindergarten through 5th grade. Again, that would be full-time enrollment in a kindergarten through 5th grade program. We have not historically done that. We don't necessarily think that is the best way for kids at that age to learn, but we do understand there are families that are interested and that are looking at outside cyber programs. We want to be able to provide our own. So Dr. Boyle and I have been actually working with the intermediate unit, the CSIU, about a program for that. Several other school districts are looking at the same model, same setup. So that would be a full-time enrollment in a cyber program offered for our kindergarten through 5th grade students. A couple things I just want to make mention of: students who elect to return from distance learning, the distance learning model, if they're a full-time distance learning student, to either the back to school or the bridge model, they may do so into semester break. We don't like students to go back and forth between, we haven't historically, between the traditional classroom and virtual. We find that's not good for the students, and we find that's not good for their learning. So we would encourage, if anybody does want to switch back from distance learning to the back to school or the bridge model, or vice versa, that they would do that at the semester break when there's a natural time frame. And the courses are also set up on a semester basis. And last, again, everybody kind of mentioned this, in the event of a mandated school closure, the distance learning model would remain in place for all students enrolled at the time of the course. And I used last year as an example. When we went out of school on March 13th, all of our students who were enrolled in our distance learning model, for them, they just continued to work through their courses. There really wasn't, there wasn't as much of a disruption for those students because they are historically used to working, most of them from home. The biggest disruption was students that come into our lab on a regular basis. They had to work from home, but we were in contact with them through telephone, through email, through different means. Okay. I think Ms. Knoll has a video that she worked on.
Hold on, I have a question.
Okay.
If a family chooses to not have their students come to school and be like do the distance learning or hybrid or whatever, can that student still participate? If he's an athlete, can he still participate?
Yes, yes. If they're
Even
enrolled,
if they're not coming into school.
How is that possible?
they're still a Danville student. They're still enrolled in the Danville School District.
But they're not here during the day.
But,
If it's all about their safety, there's no way they should be able to participate in athletics. There's no way. If it's all about safety and they want to stay home and away from everybody else, there's nothing that they need to come in for athletics.
Well, that's something that's been in place for years. I mean, we've had students, even when they
need time, Chris, this is
right.
This is different.
So correct me if I'm wrong, the students that are in our distance learning model, they're in a Danville e-learning academy. They're not in Agora or
No, it's run through us. We have teachers of record, so we have a content
Right,
teacher.
so they're
and
being taught by Danville teachers.
Yes, the teachers are the Danville teachers who they go to. Coursework is provided through GradPoint and through other.
So they're
means.
Danville students.
They are Danville students.
So it's
That's
not
why
like they're in a separate online academy that's separate from our district. They're
Correct.
in our school.
Correct.
It just happens to be our e-learning school.
Yeah, but if they want to avoid school for their safety, athletics is part of the school.
But would you've already established a practice of our e-learning academy students? I think we've already established that our e-learning academy students can participate in school sports because they are our students. It is our
Right,
school.
but that was pre-COVID. They're not staying home for their safety.
Well, I don't think that's fair that we would differentiate just because of COVID. If we offer an e-learning academy, what if the kid has leukemia and they choose to do this? Are we going to say, okay, because you have leukemia, you can do it, but if you have COVID, you can't? I mean, that's.
I would say not just athletics, but we also have students who are in our band, who participate in our drama production, who participate in other extracurriculars, like they've gone to our prom. They get a Danville diploma. So the theory is that they are still Danville students. We just educate them through the distance learning model.
They're still in full-time daily attendance, just a different location. Right. And DIAA is recognized as long as you can track full-time daily attendance for no reason. So once DIAA came out and said they could not be counted, we would be hard pressed.
Right, just like we have students with special needs who are in programs that are not housed here in Danville, but they are still Danville students, they're in programs in other districts, they still have equal access to everything in this district. It's the same concept.
So they could participate, but it would be consistent with their mindset of staying home to be safe, but then coming to athletic.
Well, we're,
Right, well, no, I'm saying, what I'm just saying, what I'm saying, I mean, that's the truth of it. They're gonna pick and choose what they wanna do to suit themselves, and that's it, pretty much. I mean, if you're not gonna come to school because you're, afraid of.
there's a difference between being on a soccer field of 22 students and being in a building of 600 students. I think that's a different.
It's worse on the soccer field because you're making sweat and everything else, and droplets and pellets, and we'll talk about that. That's not.
So I think
You can't differentiate between a school district and a school and a soccer field when you don't go through the hallways rubbing each other and getting body check and everything else down the hallway like you do in a soccer field. That's an Untitled argument.
So I think the one thing that I would go back to is making sure that no matter what model children are in, we can include them in social activities across the district for as much as possible. And although I hear what you're saying, that it seems like inconsistency, and Christina is saying we don't want to choose one thing is more important than the other. I think at the end of the day, the person at the very center of this is that child. And if they want to be involved, even though it may be philosophical, the best thing we can do is keep them with
Well, I agree with you.
And we've had students for social reasons have wanted to attend our distance learning for some mental health issues or a variety of different issues. And I understand COVID is what we're talking about right now, but historically, those are some of the reasons why our kids have wanted to participate. And it's not a large number of people, honestly, that are in our distance learning that participate in extracurriculars and activities, but they have that right and they have that opportunity.
And then the back to school model is the day, the 4-day model for 6 to 12. Is that going to be the same day every week or is it going to rotate?
Same day every week.
And which day of the week will be that?
We haven't finalized that decision. We've talked about Monday or Wednesday.
So as a parent of a 6th grader, I'm just going to say again, our 7th grader is going to be 7th grade already. It concerns me if I'm not at home having a 7th grader at home learning on their own in the back to school. In the hybrid model, I understand that. I do want to ask the team in the spring, I think Dr. Boyle shared with us some concerns about inconsistencies in learning across which teachers had which students and how that was handled. And so in the models, I think I would like to dig deeper before I pass the model next week into how we're going to specifically address those pieces in that hybrid model or whichever model that applies to. Because I want every child to get the same content, same norms that we're establishing from building level down to every teacher. So if you're in a different section or a different teacher's class, it's not going to be different learning.
We'll be able to, actually give them what our expectations are, and we're going to have further training at the beginning of the school year, as well as monitoring and holding accountability much more stringently than what we had the opportunity to do in the spring. So, and we've heard what the parents have said about what was happening in our distance learning. We are prepared to address that.
And I just want to say, I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the teachers. We were in an emergency remote learning situation. So I am not sitting here passing any judgment of any kind. I just want to be sure that we move from emergency remote learning to planned, effective online instruction.
And that's a big reason why we're looking at that one day to work with the teachers so that we do get them in a place where they are quality as far as online instruction.
Is there any part of this presentation that covers mask wearing?
Is in the books. The mask wearing is according to CDC guidelines that we are, if the students are not 6 feet apart, they're to wear masks.
And
So in some cases,
what about a medical excuse?
parents can present what they are concerned with. Yes, they'll have to do that through us. Yes.
So will a doctor's note suffice?
It could, yeah. That'd be a one-on-one conversation.
Unfortunately, at this point in time, on a national study, they actually showed the Pennsylvania ranks, and there are probably 27 or so, more states have more restrictive measures. And they put that out on, I thought, it's got stuff on it. All right. Thank you. Where I was going with that, Pennsylvania like ranks in the middle. There's far more states are more concerned about it. When they came out, the governor, Secretary Levin actually said, students, if they have a medical condition, they don't really need to provide it. You know, what we're worried about down the road, where everybody would start to say, I have medical, and you know, those are the kinds of things that are going to make it more difficult. But clearly, students with breathing, asthma, other issues, students that may be identified autistic or have sensory issues, life skills kids, they are not going to be required. But we can also say to the parents, can we try another option, shields and things like that. But we just can't say to the student, you have to wear a mask, and we demand medical information. I wish that would change a little bit, because in other states, they are in fact requiring students to present the exemption. That's why when you roll in the sheets, it just says, we presume if you walk in the door and you don't have a mask, you have a medical condition.
Is that what the Danville area school district is going to assume? Or do we have something?
Well, right now, we can't make it more restrictive than what the governor and the Secretary of Defense has already done. But if a parent says a child, and we would know that from school records already, this won't be much of a situation. I think not for today, but the administrators are going to have a far bigger problem when people just say, I'm not wearing a mask and I'm not answering any of your questions, but that isn't for today.
Well, my question is, there has to be some clarity for the parents and the students when they come to school on our first day and we show up and 80% of our students aren't wearing masks. What do we do then?
That's a public relations issue. That's an ongoing communication issue and encouragement. And I believe most parents will understand that they want their children safe, and they will understand that there's exceptions. And we hope that does not happen. But that's a great point, because that could happen.
Yeah, and then just want us to be prepared for that. If something like that does happen, we have any communication and requirements that just want to apply our mask.
Yeah, I would say I agree with Kyle in that sense that it's got to be crystal clear for parents, because ambiguity is a problem.
Right.
The second thing I would say is I would challenge the statement that we would have records on file that students who had a medical condition who couldn't wear masks would be in their file, because anxiety, stress-related things are happening. They've been out. We may not know it. It's hidden disabilities, and you can't always see them. And so a parent note, a doctor's note, whatever it is, I think will be important for clarification. So you don't have an opposition or an explosive situation with a child because they don't have written down that they have a lung, issue or something like that.
I believe you can ask, but you can't force. I would encourage parents to bring that stuff to the table. I agree with Jen. There are so many issues. Kids have so many anxiety issues going on right now. We don't know what to do.
Rudolph.
I'm done. I agree with Jen. I mean, there are issues. There are hidden disabilities and anxiety and the like, and that needs to be sorted out. But even though the Secretary and the Governor said what they said, I think parents should work with you and indicate it's not that big of a deal to bring a note, and if they want to, that would be great.
And I think you hit it on the PR piece, is that it's our job as the school board to communicate, this is our expectation for our school district, and this is what we feel constitutes a safe environment. And to say to parents, this is what we need in order to operate the school safely. So I think that's part of it, is that being a cohesive group here, when we do pass this plan that we're all comfortable with, that we're saying, this is what we want as a school board, therefore this is what it needs to happen as a district.
And that's why on this slide about parent support, that we mentioned the fact that we would appreciate if parents would encourage their child to wear the mask, help them to do it properly, and somewhat begin preparing them for the need to be wearing a mask.
In this plan, do we address when children do not have masks? I was reading something about getting on the bus, and I picture a child running out the door, going to grab the bus, but didn't know where they stuffed it the night before. Maybe it's still in the wash, maybe their mom or dad has it, and they're digging in a bag. How do we have, I'm sure we do, but can you talk about the plans that we have around that?
I think Ken has many things planned, correct, Ken, regarding purchasing masks and having things available if we need them. But I would also say Dr. Grisky is from, and hopefully there's many people listening, I think Mrs. Kinsey, our school nurse, and I have talked at the primary level, help the parents, anybody that likes to sew, that wants to give us extra masks and make child masks that we have, that would be a great option for those kids who can't. I think our intention would be to have, we would want parents to be trained, especially the little ones, to bring them. And I guess, with your permission, the comment I'd like to make is, if I'm listening to this and I'm a kindergarten, first, second grade parent, or maybe a third, fourth, fifth grade parent, I know the difficulty, in keeping a mask on a little child. I've also recently thought about the fact that it's our job as the adults to model that for them. And I can promise you this, I say this to parents all the time. Little kids adjust better than adults do. I'm not saying it's perfect, but our little kids will adjust if we model it correctly. However, do I think our job, that's why I said our classrooms need to have 6 feet of distance and kids facing one direction. We know that's not the model we want down the road, but what it allows for us is hopefully that child then can have the mask off because they're facing a direction, they have 6 feet. It's not optimal, but it's also not realistic to think a little 5, 6, 7-year-old is going to have that mask on nonstop. So I think there's a balancing act there. Maybe in middle and high school, as they're getting older and we can't have that, then there's maybe a different expectation because they're a little bit older.
Well,
Not perfect.
Things
yes, correct. That's why maybe we need more masks for them. So, but I think we know that's a very important topic on all this, being prepared for that. So,
just a quick comment. I heard from our cheerleading advisor today, and the cheerleading group is going to be selling Danville area school district masks. If anybody is interested.
Did the admin team consider that for those students who might struggle with wearing this, that we might provide them with face shields instead?
It's been discussed, yes. We have for the teachers, definitely, but we'll have to see what we have.
Because for my students with sensory needs, I purchase shields and things so that this doesn't interfere.
I think that's probably another important part, as Dr. Boda has said, we have face shields for our teachers because we also realize the importance of little kids, especially seeing our teachers' faces. That's such an important piece of them growing and seeing a teacher smiling face in the morning. So we're looking at the shields for that need.
Ken did buy both masks earlier, so he already got it before demand. And then also we are looking at supplying for the buses in case the students does forget their masks. Now, we don't recommend students forget their masks every day because the school district will go broke, but hopefully it's only 1 or 2 a day.
Yeah, wait till
Public
the end.
comment, correct? Public comment will be available at the end.
Okay.
Thanks.
And wait, quickly, I just want to introduce Jessica Scholl. Yeah. No, you can't do my name tonight. Huh? She is our new assistant principal at the Danville Middle School, and she is our guru with social media and video. So happy to have her.
All right, everyone. So we've been giving you a lot of information, and we've created a visual for you. This will kind of highlight what it will look at the elementary level and what it will look at the secondary level. Obviously, these are working videos, but they're just a snapshot of what to expect.
I think it's important to note, in the video, you're going to see the students standing outside. The first question that parents will ask is, won't that create a long line of kids? So where this takes place, could be maybe as they're entering the building and or in classrooms, and that's again outlined in our plan. So this is just showing that. So what you're doing is saying teacher text temperature, that is followed by hand sanitizer, and then certain questions being asked will be next.
She's reading the screen less.
Are there plans to have like multiple points of entry in the morning? Like at the primary school, like use the gym, the front, and that would kind of go to try to speed up everybody getting in the building.
So again, in this example, you're saying Mr. Wynn is as a student's entering the classroom in the beginning of the day.
I was gonna say, is this at one point of
Yes,
the
this
day
is
or?
the beginning of the day. And again, very much so. It's outlined. We are very specific in that plan that is on the website for secondary schools and elementary of how this looks in each section of the day.
And also, we are asking parents to do screenings at home as well, so that before they get on the bus, they're screened.
So the last point you saw there was kids sitting at desks, not being necessarily that many feet apart, so they would have masks on in that situation if they're not at the adequate space for distance. Okay, so regarding your question, you want me to, the answer to that I think would be, we need to be very smart on how kids will exit the bus, as well as enter the bus in a productive manner, and we will make sure they do that. But I would think there would be at least, slowly 2 buses coming in as parents drop off. I think that's why we put there the liberal time, whether it's high school or elementary, we need liberal times because we have to allow the kids to get in. One other comment that I would make on that is maybe some parents are asking the question of, well, that extra day provides the Google Classroom for preparation for middle and high school kids. What about our elementary kids? We will have access to Chromebooks for every one of our children in this district. We were not anticipating all the kindergarten, but now we are. That's very important. How we're going to prepare K-5 is we're going to be very creative when the students are coming in and out in the morning and afternoon of utilizing that time to begin to create means for them accessing Google Classroom, learning how to use that, teaching their parents, so then we're prepared from interior for them to do that at home if they would need to be. They'll be the teacher of their parents. So, Mr. Gump, I don't know, I spoke a lot for elementary. Is there anything you'd like to add?
So as we wrap up this presentation, there are a couple of more slides. I want to actually take everyone to the website as well here. So let's go ahead and advance to the next slide. Okay, so Dr. Boyle and the team, we have developed an email address, reopening@danvillesd.org. So if any community member would like to pose a question, concern, or some suggestions, that is the email address they can use. So as we continue to work on these drafts and get the updates from whatever health agency or government agency as time goes on here, but as we plan for the 22nd of July, we are going to be looking over these questions, comments, suggestions, and listening to them, and then working through those together. So there will be a lot of questions concerning entrance and so on. But again, the reopening@danvillesd.org. Can you go to the website? Okay, thanks. Okay, so going to the district website, up in the top left, there's a tab called Reopening. So Mr. Ryan has gone ahead and done that. So the first thing that we are going to advise our community members is to please go to that Danville Area School District Community Survey. Dr. Boyle, you're hoping to have that by July 20th on Monday by 3:30, right? If there are any survey submissions there. So again, we advise that our community members go ahead and fill that survey out before that time. Again, more feedback and interface with the community on our draft plans. Also, just wanted to show you, as many people have said, we have gone into great detail. It is overkill, at least we hope it is, but we wanted to provide our community members, our parents, and our students an opportunity to really look into what we are planning. So as Dr. Bickhart scrolls down here, we try to have it broken up into prior to school, what's happening, busing and transportation. If a student is eating breakfast, what are they going to do in the morning when they come in? How about a student not eating breakfast, going to homeroom? And then throughout the day, how is their day going to look like in their classrooms? The big thing, Dr. Bickhart, you asked about me adding something. The big thing for elementary is we have about 20 students scheduled in each homeroom. And for the most part, those 20 students are going to be together throughout the course of the day. So that is a big change in that back to school model, where they're really going to be with those other 20 students and with them throughout the day. Teachers, instead of the students going ahead and going over and walking over to their ELA classroom, the ELA teacher is going to come over to their homeroom and teach from there. So we're really going to keep them safe and secure within their classrooms. Also, a big question at the elementary level is always specials. So we lay out both at primary school and Liberty Valley what specials will be out in a different classroom and what specials will be in the homeroom classroom. Then there's some lunch bullets. What's recess going to look like? If we have a situation where a temperature is high or some symptoms are being seen or witnessed, we have the health office plan listed there for parents. I think that's going to be helpful for them to be able to read through that. Of course, exiting the school building, it's going to be very different from in the past. We're thinking most likely at the elementary level, 2 buses at a time. We typically have 2 waves of buses that come through, and so it's maybe 9, 10, 11 buses at one time, but we're looking at 2 buses dismissed at a time, along with our parent pickups in the afternoon. And then, is there one more section, Dr. Bickhart? I think that the very final page is really other considerations, and we want to put those down there. Some of these bullets here are review, others are new. Again, we try to think what questions we are getting or anticipating questions we may get from parents. We wanted to put that information out there again. So my hope is at the elementary level and the secondary level, we have answered a lot of the questions that parents and board members may have in these draft plans.
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question, Mr. Duncan. Maybe this isn't for you, I'm not sure. In the traffic pattern, when you think about, it might be for Mr. Snover, or it could be up here at this campus. I mean, Liberty Valley is kind of out on its own, but how, I know you guys have talked about it, but can we publicly address how people are going to be doing traffic patterns and just a little glimpse into how we're going to handle that as a district, because we've had that issue when we're not in a COVID situation. So it'd be nice to share that.
Okay, I'm waiting until I finish the survey to see how many parents plan on driving their own children, how many will be on our buses, to make a final informed decision on what goes, what direction goes where, and that will be communicated.
What's the timeline again on that? When are you looking for the feedback on the survey? And
By Monday the 20th, quick turnaround.
3:30, right?
3:30, yeah.
Dr. Boyd, would you like to share anything at this point with those plans?
Go ahead, what do
Yeah,
you want
okay.
to start with?
Okay, so I'll start with Liberty Valley. So how Liberty Valley operates, especially in the afternoon, is we have the parent pickups on one side of the building and the buses on the other. So again, buses would be 2 buses at a time. So let's say it's, help me out here with time, 2:30 maybe. We start, let's just think 2:30. 2:30, we have 2 buses coming down into the center. So that's about, it can range, the numbers can range differently, but physically, socially distant as they come through the hallways. And then maybe a couple minutes later, we start with, typically it's all parent pickup at one time. So we're going to do 1 grade at a time. If the numbers are doable, we'll see how many people opt for the parent pickup. But do one like 3rd grade at one time, but 3rd grade with siblings, because there may be a 4th grade sibling or a 5th grade sibling who may be being picked up at the same time. Have them come down, but they will be in the gymnasium area at the parent pickup area, and then we'll have checklists and rosters for them to go through. We do have bus cards for those parents that know that their kids have bus cards at primary school in Liberty Valley. We're going to discontinue those until further notice, and we'll be using rosters and class lists. So really from 2:30 maybe through 3:10, 3:15, we'll be working through maintaining that safety throughout. So that's the plan at Liberty Valley. Primary school's tricky, right?
I wouldn't say we're gonna have to look at the numbers, as Dr. Boyle said, who's moving where. I think 2 buses at a time and being very careful. I think a very important thing for parents to understand is for us in the K-5 world to make this work, we have to live within the range of when the majority of our staff is in the building, because we need, little kids, I shouldn't say it's probably 6 through 12 too. We're gonna need lots of people in the halls guiding traffic, and keeping that social distance and doing that. Again, our kids will learn, they will. They follow directions of their teachers. I think that's the big thing. We're going to use the staff we have to get kids to their cars. We're going to look at needs. We might have to, have parents park and take the kids to them, or in a loop and bring them to them. When we know they're there, and check them off and know who's picking them. So we anticipate it being a very deliberate, slow process. So safety is still kept. Mr. Gelp and I have been adamant about being safe with kids getting on buses and leaving with our bus cards. We're not going to change that because of this. It's just going to take more time, and we'll do that effectively.
I can echo what Dr. Pickard said, and a lot at the middle school is going to have to do with how many parents are driving. But as we've already mentioned, it's even under normal circumstances, getting students into the middle school in the morning is a challenge, especially with the traffic on Route 11. So one of the keys, of course, is extending that time that parents have to drop students off, so we can avoid that mad rush in the last 5 to 10 minutes before the bell, and give them that extra time to get in. We have options, utilizing the staff that we have to open up additional entries into the school in the morning. In that back area, we have multiple doors that run along the back of the school. That would simply be an extension of the current way that students come in. I would, from my level, I'm looking at limiting the number of entries into the school, because the more ways students are coming in, the more students we have in different areas of the school prior to us having the ability to do a health and wellness check on that student. So I am, interested in limiting that. However, we do have options with that as far as what morning goes. Same with buses, limiting the number of buses that exit, that drop students off at any given time, so that we are staggering students walking into the building in the morning. Luckily, the morning's a little easier in that sense, simply because the buses do stagger in naturally based on the runs that they have. Our doors will be opening at 7:35, and from 7:35 to 8:05, 8:10, we will be having buses throughout that whole time. So the number of buses do naturally tend to stagger, as do the parents, but we will be able to extend that time a little bit. The afternoon, we are looking at doing, again, a staggered dismissal to try to get students out in waves to limit congestion in the hallways and numbers of students. So looking at getting the parent pickups and the students that walk out the door ahead of students that ride buses is a priority. And then doing a very kind of calculated dismissal from the classrooms of the buses as they pull into the building, so that we're not having traditionally, the bell rings and the hallways fill up with students and they all pile out of the classrooms into their lockers. And the goal, of course, is to limit that as much as possible, and doing it calculated by the buses as they come into the building and onto our grounds.
Additionally, we do have our 2 school police officers who can help monitor traffic and move things in an orderly fashion.
Okay, so just in review, you put up that next slide, Jeremy. So in review, we have the email address that is there, the email address for people to provide comments, questions, and suggestions. Out on the website under the reopening tab, we have good information there for community members to look at. And essentially, that brings us to the last slide, which comes back to the school board. You've already asked questions, but there are any final questions for the leadership team?
Yeah, I have a general question. I kind of know the answer, but I think it's prudent to hear it. I'd like for the administration of the core group, and by the way, there's been a tremendous amount of work behind these plans and in preparation for a lot of different unknowns and complexities in all of this. If we could just keep it as appropriately short, I'd like to hear from main parts of the administration
address what your recommendation is and what's behind that recommendation. In other words, hear it from your view. A lot of you folks think would be appropriate to comment on this. Have kids. We all do. There's a lot of strong opinions. There's a lot of concerns we all are carrying. There's a lot of different views of this whole situation. But I think at this juncture, as we look at these models and we debate them, we consider what's best for our interests and our families. I think at this juncture, I'd like to hear what you guys say from your view. You've worked as far as anybody in it. You're immersed in the details, especially in this community. You just take 30 seconds or a minute, whatever is appropriate, to share with the audience what you recommend and why.
I'll start from my perspective as a principal of grades 3, 4, and 5. The options we have presented to you this evening, a lot of work was put into it, a lot of thought was taken to put it all together. And there are feelings and opinions, and I have to say there has been very heated. Now, when I say heated discussion, there are not arguments, but I have never seen in my 10 years here at Danville such just heated, good discussion as to what's best for kids. And we continue to carry that forward in everything we provided for you this evening. So what we wanted to provide, there are reasonable options. We want our students, our Danville area school district students, we want them in some way, shape, or form for various reasons, but we want them to be connected to the terrific teachers we have, the amazing curriculum that we have, and the opportunities we have for students. So when you look at those options set before you, please know that those, again, have been thought through very deeply, and they are there because we want to provide the best education we can, given where we're at in the midst of the global pandemic.
Thank you.
Mr. Huron, I would say more than probably anybody, kindergarten, first and second, kids need to be in school. But I also believe that we need to be respectful of every family in our district. We know how special Danville is. We know the work that our kids do every day. We have the best teachers, I believe, anywhere. And I know this is a challenge, but I believe they're up to that challenge. And what I would say is, I want parents to hear, we know you're scared, we know you're uncertain in certain situations, but we want to provide you, please, you saw the options. We want you, I think there are families out there scared and they think they need a new option. I don't think they also know they want to be part of Danville. And I think that's what I want all families to hear. We want to be an option for any family that is sitting in our district right now. You're ready to come back and you believe that the state says we can do that on August 27th, let's go. But if you're unsure, let's work together. We're not perfect, but let's work together on a bridge model that meets your needs. If you're just not sure about that, then here's our cyber model. And we're going to do something a little different, K-5, that traditional cyber. But I think the one thing about bridge that I really learned was we've got some parents that don't want their child on a computer all the time. And that's kind of what concerns me about just going straight cyber. That's why we really dove into this bridge model. And that's why we're where we're at. And we want to be there. We want to provide that opportunity for all our families.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any substitute for brick and mortar schools. I think the absolute best education that students will get are in our classrooms with their teachers in front of them, interacting with their peers, and being involved very actively in that educational process. With that said, I also recognize that there are circumstances that every family has to deal with, face, that may not make that the best viable option. I'm a parent of 3 students in this district, one at the primary school, one at the middle school, and one going into the high school. I want my students in school because I know that is probably educationally, socially, the best place for them to be. But again, I have to also look at it through the eyes of all the other parents and families who might have different circumstances, and that's not the best option for them. So we want to keep students connected to our district because we have a great district here. We want students to be part of the Danville area school district, whatever that may look like for them. So as was already mentioned, we want to provide as many options as we can to give students the connection to the district and get an education based on
what is best, what the circumstances are for their family and what's going to be best for those kids.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo that this team has worked countless hours together, revising, adapting, reworking, even till today, 4:30, sitting around a table trying to iron things out and bounce ideas off of each other. Again, echo, we feel like we have the best school district around. We want our kids part of our school district. I think we all, administrators, and again, I have 2 children in the district, would love to see my kids go back to school 5 days a week. Just don't know if it's possible. It comes down to numbers. You know, at the secondary level, if we have 130 plus students to 200 students out, just don't know if that's possible. We don't know if that meets the needs of all those students. We don't want them going outside cyber programs. We don't feel like that's the best option for them. You know, in many cases, our own cyber is not the best option for them, but that's what they end up doing. And, you know, we try to fight that battle. We try to keep them in our high school or in our middle school. But that's ultimately what they choose. And we, you know, again, it's been a lot of debate. It's been a lot of back and forth. And again, I think what Dr. Boyle said is that this is fluid. We certainly hope that we can be back in school 5 days a week. Just don't know if that's completely possible. So thank you.
I have a real quick question. I know, but thanks again for all the work you've done. And I think we all agree, or most people in the room will agree, that education is important, but after-school activities, whether it be band or chorus or drama or sports, are all also equally important in the education and social well-being of our children. What is the plan? And maybe there isn't one yet because we don't know exactly where we're going. But if we aren't in school on Wednesday, we're getting kids that don't drive or aren't in school for that day, getting them to practice. Are we going to move practices later, or band practices later, or chorus, or whatever? Like, I know it's a big picture, and but I'm sure there are parents out there listening that are going, well, how am I going to get, you know, Jimmy to practice at 3:30 after school when he's not there and I'm working?
That's a really good question. It's something that we've discussed, and that's, I think, a con of the 4 out of the 5 day model. I think in looking at a 5 day model, you have kids, we have a lot of kids, and that's, I just wanted to add something about extracurriculars and athletics in a minute, but to answer your question, that's something we have to figure out the solution to, and that's working with coaches and working with different people to figure out what is the best way for that to happen. But again, that is definitely a con of the 4 day model, whether it's Monday or whether it's Wednesday. But one more thing I just wanted to add, to answer your question, Mr. Huron, I want to say, since I've been involved in our volunteer summer workouts and helping organizing things, I think I've had the perspective of seeing what school starts to look like. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen the value of kids being together and starting to be together and understanding that we are giving them parameters. We're telling them they have to wear masks when they're screening. We're telling them they have to be masked up during certain times. And again, the value of them being together and seeing the camaraderie of kids and seeing how important it is to be together, but also be able to follow rules. We had our sports physicals last week on the 9th of July. We brought in approximately 130, 135 students in for sports physicals. And we had them in the halls, we had them lined up, we had them as best we could, separated 6 feet apart. I'd say 99% of them were in masks and were fine. And we had a kid or two that put up some resistance to us, and we worked with them. And we kind of kept them separated and we kept them distant. But I started to see, I think, from my perspective, in my role, what school looks like. And I think, obviously, I support students being here. I say that as a parent, I say that as an administrator that deals with extracurriculars and athletics. So it's been very positive, and all the people that I've talked to in other neighboring districts, I don't speak for them, but they've said the same thing back to me. So I just wanted to add that perspective of we have started to do things, and it's not like on the first day of school, obviously it'll be chaotic and there'll be a lot of kids, and it's going to be involve a lot of patience from a lot of parents and a lot of teachers, but at the same time we have slowly started to open up and do things, and whether that's an open gym for basketball or whether that's a voluntary workout for a girls' soccer team.
So those things have already been happening, but I just wanted to add that perspective.
Thank you. So the fall physicals were 130, 135.
Yep, in that range, yeah.
Okay. And
Over the course.
Roughly, that's the same amount of kids who are going to be staying home. So we project for virtual learning, right? But what do you think about those two numbers that I just said? Think about what that means. Think about that. We're going to inconvenience parents whose kids come to school and do extracurricular activities, and that doesn't count. You don't need a physical for band or chorus or anything else. We're going to inconvenience these parents one day a week to try to get their students, athletes in here to practice one day a week for 120 kids.
And as I said, I
Think about
that's
that.
a con of that.
Think
of
about that.
setup. So there's pros and cons to all of them. That's a con.
Right. Think about that. And that's just for the fall. What about the winter and the spring? Same thing. We're penalizing.
And I think what Mr. Witt said earlier was if we turn around and see we only have 10 or 20 students that are out, I think 5 days is completely doable. But I think he's and Mr. Snover are just talking on the conservative side that we need to look at what could happen if that many kids are out. So I think that's why we talked that.
But I just think those two numbers should be thought about by a lot of people, including those who are listening.
I also think that we need to think if 130 students leave the district to go to a charter cyber school or to be a homeschool, that will impact their financial.
And are we allowed to disclose how much each student we lose, or is that something we cannot?
No, we can disclose
Yeah,
it.
I
I
think
don't
that
have
should-
it here, but
Right.
we can
It's
disclose that.
approximate number is thousands of dollars, correct?
Well, charter schools about $12,000 for a regular student that we would pay.
But we do have, but we are looking at a way to virtually educate those students with our own teachers so that they don't. And I think that's an important statement for me to make as a board member, is that I think that there is a very doable way for this district to manage in-person and virtual learning without forcing parents to choose other options. We have a phenomenal district with outstanding administrators who just stood here and have spent hundreds probably of hours over these plans over the last couple of months, with amazing teachers who are going to continue to teach those children. I think we can think about school differently so we can get them here for 5 days. So it's not an if or, right? And so I would just, again, say that I challenge our district team to think about how to reframe how we look at specials and how we're doing that teaching. There's a great comment that I read this week in Education Week that said, this is an opportunity for schools to either put what they're doing in the classroom online or to rethink how they're educating kids in online learning and make that an effective online learning option. I think that's where the mind shift. I just challenge you guys to think about how can we not make it 120 kids lose so 120 kids gain. I think in this district, we're phenomenal. We can do this. All kids can win here.
I just want to say thank you. You guys did an awesome job, and it's a very detailed plan, even as a draft. And as someone who's developing the same plan for my district where I work, I know how challenging it is. The rabbit holes that we go down for every little question, what if, leads to a whole nother menu of rabbit holes. And it's really hard to answer all those questions. I want to advocate for our phenomenal teachers, though. It is not easy to manage an in-class and an out-of-class caseload, and I think that's what you are trying to address. And asking a teacher to do 2 classrooms, because that's what technically it is, no matter if it's 5 kids, 20 kids, or 120 kids, you're asking them to manage in-class and out-of-class. And that's an instructional nightmare for many teachers. Not because they can't do it, but just because it's a lot more. It's not as simple as just putting it online. And so that for me is, I understand why you're looking at that. And I think we need to advocate, though, if we're asking teachers to do that, we need to accommodate them and help them to be able to do that. And I get what you're saying from a number perspective. This is not about equality. It's not fair. I mean, COVID is not fair to any of us. This is not fair to our kids. We can't fix it. But we have to look at equity as best we can. And it's not just, equity for the kids is primary, but we have to have equity for our staff who have to provide for them. And we have to provide some kind of vehicle so that they can do the phenomenal job that they do and that they did when we closed on an emergency situation. So kudos to you guys. I mean, it was an awesome presentation. Thank you. And thank you for thinking about our staff as well.
Excuse me, Christina. This is Donna Christensen, the Director of Special Ed. I just wanted to add, I had heard some concerns with parents regarding children with special needs. And I want you to know that we have prepared for their attendance at school. We've ordered extra safety equipment because some students with special needs will require hands-on assistance. So our teachers are going to be fully prepared with the proper equipment. And we've also moved around some teachers for extra supervision. So when we have to help students with hygiene issues or integrating with their peers, they will be fully integrated as they previously were. They will just need some extra support, but it is our intent to keep them as safe as possible and also keep our staff as safe as possible. We've also ordered some clear masks so that students with hearing impairments will not be excluded from the visual that they need when they're looking to be included in communication. So I just wanted you to have that information. I know that one parent had that concern. Thank you.
And to Cass's question earlier, the PI, for those of you who don't know, the PIAA did issue a statement today on their fall sports. They had a meeting sometime this afternoon, and their intent is to heat acclimation for football will begin on August 10th, and the first practice date for the remaining fall sports will begin on August 17th. That's just from the statement they released on social media. If anybody wants to read the full statement, they can certainly go to Twitter or Facebook or PIAA Sports and read that statement.
Thank you. I just want to remind those of you that do have concerns for the special education students, we do have the options in the plan for those students out on the website as well.
At this time, we'll move on to personnel. Have a motion to approve 7.1.
I made that motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need to make the.
What? Go ahead.
I wanted to make a motion to amend the attachment to 7.1 and recommend a salary of.
Not 7.3.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bobby prompted me.
Okay.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying I realized I might have missed it. And then, yeah, we missed 6.1.
We're going to go ahead and do the vote for 7.1. I know.
So do we have a motion for that?
Yes, we did.
Dr. Pikachu?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Dr. Gerstein? Yes. Mr. Huron?
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch?
Yes.
Mr. Riker?
Yes.
Mrs. Fish?
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds?
Yes. And I apologize, we skipped past John, Chris, 6.1, revised guidelines and protocols for socialization of sports and activities. So you want to go ahead and do that now? Is that addition?
Dr. Boyle, just the update is the same.
We did some revisions to address the DOH recommendations regarding travel out of state to hotspots, so to speak. So we revised that, put that in to make it clear what our expectations were.
And also the increased use of masks when kids are coming in and out of the building and being screened.
Right.
That as well.
And I'm assuming it's being posted just like the other plans on our website.
Yeah, once approved, it'll be reposted.
Okay, do you have anything else, Kristen? Okay. At this time, do I have a motion to approve? The item?
Second.
Yep. Okay. Karen?
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Dr. Gursky,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Edney.
Yes. Okay, we'll now move on to 7.2, which is the job description for administrative services coordinator. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Dr. Gursky,
No.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. Okay, 7.3 is to hire Director of Curriculum Information and Technology. I have a motion to approve the hiring of John Bickard for that position.
I make a motion to amend the contract for a salary of $108,000.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Karen?
I make a motion to approve 7.3. Or do we need to vote on?
I think we need to vote.
Okay, sorry, Terry.
And you can do that as all in favor, so you don't have to do a roll call vote till you get to 7.3, then you can do a roll call.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now that we have a motion to approve hiring John at $108,000.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, would you, let me know who the motion is again?
Milo and Christina.
Okay, Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Dr. Gursky,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes. Okay, under policy and insurance, we have 8.1, instructional hours resolution. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Technology is a great thing.
Mr. Kirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Dr. Katachu,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
excuse me, Dr. Gursky,
Yes.
Mr. Huron,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmonds.
Yes.
I'd like to take this moment before public comment to congratulate Dr. Bickart as our new curriculum instruction and technology director. The only problem is my primary school teachers are not happy with me.
At this time, is there any public comment? You have 3 minutes to discuss doesn't have to be something on the agenda.
We have a few public comments on Zoom. First off is Amy Bingaman. I'm going to allow you to talk. Please unmute and state your name and address.
Amy Bingaman, 84 Stump Road, Danville, PA. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you to all who had, any kind of input in putting together the proposed upcoming models and stuff. As a parent of a kid going into first grade and sixth grade, I have talked with other, parents that have children that are in the district and stuff as well. Our concerns are that, yes, we really are adamant about getting our children back to school for the social aspect, for the, learning to the children from their teachers. I apologize, I'm kind of like with my words here a little bit. I'm a little bit upset, but so our main concerns is the children are required to have the health screening by the parents in the beginning of each day, plus they're going to get health screened as they walk into either building. There should be an option. I feel that, masks should, if the proper requirements, like, if they are being 6 feet socially distanced, that masks should not be 100% required. As we're seeing, you people here on our screens and stuff at home, you've decided that if you're 6 feet apart, masks are 100% required. There are children out there that even if, I know Dr. Bickhart did say, that about, if we teach through, kids are great, they'll adjust. Some kids just won't adjust to wearing a mask. And I feel, as a parent with a child who does have a disability, not a disability, excuse me, a health issue, that I feel that, if you're screening your children, if they're healthy enough to come into the classroom, I feel masks should not be required. Now, I do know that you have to follow CDC, requirements and the governor's requirements and this and that and the other, but, we're really concerned and we're really scared for our kids that they they love being out there enjoying, things with other kids, and they do not want any kind of, I don't know, what do I want to say, what's the word? Hindrances of any kind, like a mask. Do you kind of understand what I'm saying? I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm very upset about this whole situation, with everything going on, not just with you. I appreciate everything that you're doing, but I just feel that, if as an adult and as a parent, if we feel that sending our kid to school without a mask because of the fact that it's going to hinder their learning in any kind of way, it should be our option.
10 seconds, I'm sorry, you have 10 seconds.
Okay, well, I'm done then.
Amy, I do understand what you're saying. It's Dr. Boyle. I do understand what you're saying, and please be aware that we are working to have a 6-foot distance so children do not have to wear a mask the whole day and to minimize the amount of time they are in a mask.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other public comment?
All right, we have another one from Zoom. Jason Alexander, you're allowed to talk. Please state your name and unmute your mic and give your address.
Hi, this is Stephanie Alexander, 214 Faust Street, Danville, PA 17821. I am talking from a pre-K counts second year and a first year kindergarten mother's perspective. I'm hoping that somewhere on the website they're going to address pre-K counts a little more on what that learning experience is going to look like, because it obviously isn't, kindergarten where there's desks for all of the students. So I would like to hear a little more on that. I would also like to suggest maybe in your pickup options for students, I'm happy to do carpooling with my children and my nieces and nephews. If maybe you might consider doing something that will accommodate picking up my pre-K counts child along with the other students. That might help some of the combustion when picking up children. You know, if you could maybe shuffle students out when the pre-K kids are being dismissed. I also want to add, maybe odd to some people to think about, hydration for the children, since they're wearing masks, you know, a small portion of the day. And I assume that you won't be allowing water fountains to be used. Maybe coming up with a good way of keeping the children hydrated so they can have better learning experiences. I do appreciate everything that you guys have done to help facilitate everyone's worries with the coronavirus. And I think you've done a very good job so far in alleviating some of our worries about children getting into school and getting into their learning environment, because pre-K and kindergarten, you can't just learn that at home. You know, you need that socialization. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Alexander, our Head Start Pre-K Counts Director is online on Zoom, but she can get a hold of you later this week and have the discussion to support what you are talking about. She also has a reopening plan, and I'll get that from her when she finalizes it to be put on our website.
All right, we have another Zoom commenter. Lonnie Ryer, please unmute, state your name and address.
Lonnie Ryer, 209 Woodhill Road. I have a couple questions after reading through what's posted on the website, which you talk about the virtual instruction day, but there's no details about what that looks like. Or do you just get extra homework that you're doing while you're at home all day? Are you interacting with teachers during your virtual day? So I'd like more information on that. I've also spent time looking at various cyber schools in the area for the PA charter schools versus Danville's. And while I assume the district would rather people stay in district, I can't find any real details about what the curriculum per grade looks like, how it really functions, whereas every other cyber school I go to, I can find useful information. So besides going to the website and having it tell me to contact the guidance counselor, is there going to be a system where you start putting out information on what the cyber school curriculum looks like? Also, in terms of the school bus, you talk about school bus loading and that it's going to start potentially at 2:30 and go to 3:10 at, say, Liberty Valley. What is the plan for the students that don't get on the 2:30 bus, and what do they do with that 40 minutes where you can't be doing instruction and you also can't socialize because you have to be 6 feet apart? Another thing, and I think where it comes into how I make my decision if I send my two kids back into the classroom isn't so much about my worrying about COVID, it's worrying about it doesn't feel like school because we've put so many restrictions in place. And so when you have elementary kids, in general, in the elementary school classrooms, kids sit on the rug, they move here, they move there, they're in groups. And so if everyone is now sitting at a desk 6 feet apart, are you really teaching in the way that is most beneficial for the younger kids? And you know, in Liberty Valley, you have teachers who all do it very different, but my son's class last year, there wasn't a single desk or chair in one of his classrooms. Obviously, that is not a situation that will be possible. And so I would like a little more information on how that is being addressed. And my last question relates to what is the school's plan for if a kid does end up being COVID positive, and how you deal with their quarantine and the kids that are exposed by being in school with them. And the same
30 seconds.
And the same when it comes to the teacher. You know, if a teacher unfortunately ends up with COVID, what are you doing with them being out, and are all the kids then quarantining at home? That's it.
Thank you.
I don't feel like any of those things were addressed in the plan that was given, that was posted online.
All right, thank you. you're free to send an email or make a contact, and we can have further discussions. I will say that we did mention the fact that we are extending our online learning platform, and we are working to pick which particular system we'll be working with. And when we do have that finalized and board approved, we will be posting everything.
Are you going to post it before parents have to make a decision and before you vote on it, so that one has an opportunity to comment before it's voted?
At this point, I can't answer that because I have to make the contacts and do what needs to be done, but we will look into making sure that parents do have the information as soon as possible. Correct. They want to see it ahead, and we'll do our best to do that. Any other comments?
Yes, we have another comment. Anthony Petrick, go ahead and unmute your mic, give your name and address.
Thanks. Tony Petrick, I'm at 197 Skyward Drive, Danville. First, I'll echo some of the other comments. I appreciate all the effort that everybody's put into this. I think this certainly sounds like a very reasonable and well thought out plan, and I realize there's a lot of detail that needs to be added. So I have 4 questions. 3 are pretty straightforward, and then I'll make some comments and ask you the last one. So the first is will there be grading full grading in all these models? Yes? So no more pass fails, at least as we anticipate today.
No, not at all.
Good. Second, it wasn't clear to me on the in-person plan, and I'm asking specific to the high school now. It wasn't clear to me. Are we anticipating the students will be on rotating schedules for their day off, or are you anticipating that there will be a single day a week that no students will be in school? What's the plan for that?
If necessary, there would be no students in the school on that single day.
On a single day.
Right.
Okay, so this gets into my real big question, which is about the fluidity and flexibility that you guys have. So we are going to have an awful lot of students this year out of school who aren't particularly sick. If you have cold or flu symptoms, just simple cold symptoms will be keeping people out. They'll screen positive. Influenza will keep people out, and then kids will be out, whether they're COVID positive or just experiencing these symptoms, who aren't particularly sick. Are these students, if they miss 1 day or 2 days, and it's not the day that or on their days that they're supposed to be in school, are they on those days, will they be just able to stay home and pick right up where they left off? I noticed the language was that course content will be delivered by Danville area school district teachers. Are we talking about live stream classes? I think it's critically important that with all the students who will be missing, whether it's COVID or not, that they be able to really have a lot of continued education, and that this be something that moves fluidly, very, very straightforward along in a progression, and it's not something that just, that they miss a day or 2 and they wind up, having this staggered content.
You have 30 seconds. We'll answer your questions at the end of your question.
Yeah, I'm good with it right now. Go ahead and answer.
Okay. Jeremy, do you want to address that?
There were a number of questions there. Which one in particular, Dr. Petrick, would you like me to answer?
I think the most important one is the flexibility. If you've got a student who's out of school on a Tuesday who's supposed to be there, will that student be able to attend a live stream class or get their regular education that day?
So we do not have plans at this time to do live stream classes for a number of reasons, confidentiality and a number of other reasons that would happen in the classroom. But we always, just like if a student were out any particular day pre-COVID, teachers prepare lessons, send them home, they pick up lessons in the office. If they're out multiple days, they can for educational travel or any of those types of things, and that I think we would try to follow that same practice where, that we did before. So again, call the main office, contact the guidance counselor, contact the teachers. Teachers would send home information about what your student missed that day or two from school.
Well, my only
Other option there, Dr. Patrick, is the fact that we do have Google Classrooms for each teacher, and they could be posting everything online, and therefore that would be accessible at home when the child is at home.
And we feel that that's one of the positives with the 4-day-a-week model, that teachers will have that extra time, that one day to prepare and put lessons on Google Classroom for the whole entire week. So if a student were to miss 1 or 2 days, the student could just get on their Google Classroom just like they did from March on.
Okay, thanks. I think that answers my question, because that really what I'm trying to get at is I think the number of students who are going to be in that situation is going to be much, much greater, than you've ever experienced before. So that's really what it's getting at. Thank you.
We have more public comment. Matthew Nelson. Go ahead and unmute your microphone, give your name and address.
Hi, this is Matthew Nelson. I live at 22 Wodenshire Lane in Danville. I guess I have 3 comments. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone for their long hours and efforts to put together the best plans they could with what limited data we have. In June, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with a policy recommendation for school reopening. And in that statement, the AAP strongly advocated that all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with a goal of having students physically present in the school. So thank you for making that possible. Second, in review of the American Academy of Pediatric guidelines for reopening schools, it seems that we are maximizing the safety of our children in the school in the proposed plan. For instance, desk spacing recommendations are actually for 3 to 6 feet. And if I understand correctly, we're talking about them being spaced at 6 feet. So I do appreciate we are trying to maximize what we can for the safety of the kids. Third, in regards to masks, just a quick comment in regards to that policy from the AAP. They say, when developing policy regarding the use of a cloth mask coverings by students or school staff, school districts and health advisors should consider whether the use of a cloth face covering is developmentally appropriate and feasible, and whether the policy can be instituted safely. If not developmentally feasible, which may be the case for younger students, and cannot be done, so would cause the mask wearer to touch their face more than they otherwise would, schools may choose not to require their use when physical distancing measures can be effectively implemented. School staff and older students may be able to wear cloth face coverings safely and consistently and should be encouraged to do so. So I just wanted to point those recommendations out from the AAP, because I do really think that the plan that we have here, given the limited information we have, is a very good plan, in my opinion. I'm just curious, were those guidelines taken into consideration, or will they be?
They have been, and I do have them referenced in our summary that we will be sending to the state once it's approved.
Thank you much.
All right, we have another comment. Ashley Mingle, go ahead and unmute your mic and give your name and your address.
Ashley, are you on?
All right, we are going to.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
Oh, she's here. Okay.
I apologize. I couldn't get my phone unmuted. Yes, I'm Ashley Mingle. I live at 25 Hillside Drive, Danville, PA. My question is related to the first question when we were talking about kids with special needs. My main question is will there be any disciplinary actions if kids can't wear the masks? I mean, that's really my biggest concern, being that my kids, I have 2 that are ADHD, and, you know, with the struggle of keeping it on, will there be any repercussions?
I would not expect any discipline in those types of situations. Donna, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. No, absolutely not. We would never discriminate against a child because of their disability. But we are being proactive and our goal is to be preventative. So that's why we're adding extra staff and support so that we can avoid those situations. So if a child is struggling with equipment or anything preventatively, we can take them out of the room for a walk. We can give them a break. So we're definitely taking that into consideration. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm.
All right, we have another public comment. Mark Thomas. Oh, unfortunately, Mark is in an older version of, I'm going to promote you to a panelist, Mark, so you can talk because you're in an older version. Go ahead and give your name. And address. Mark, you there? All right. Moving on, we have Grace Showalter. Go ahead and unmute and give your name and address.
Hi, this is John Showalter, 179 Valley West Road, Danville. So looking at the survey results, where only about 60% of people were even prepared to come back, and it was just like 50-some% were prepared to come back. If the hybrid option is not offered and a large group goes to cyber school, you know, the district could be looking at a multi-million-dollar budget deficit. Didn't hear that mentioned and hadn't heard your guys' thoughts on how, you know, we would deal with, you know, a 3, 5, 10% budget deficit because of a large switch to cyber school.
So I think we did address that a little bit. What we are trying to do is we have our own cyber program, and we're also doing that bridge model where our own teachers are going to teach. Now, we can't stop parents and children from going to another cyber school, but we can try to keep them in the district with providing these multiple layers of options for our parents that we have given tonight.
Yeah, but so my reading of the outline was the back to school model was either then the distance learning that really doesn't compare to some of, you know, some of the other cyber programs, or the hybrid model that actually would invest in a greater deal of cyber program. And that really was, you know, the choice that's going to be made in a week.
So it's not an either or model. So parents will have a choice to do multiple layers. They could opt to keep their kids at home and do distance learning with their own teachers. And they could opt to do our cyber program, and they could opt to send their kids to school.
So then just for clarity, is it, so the vote next week, is it any of the three can be approved, all three could be approved?
It's the plan to provide all three as choices. So if they go through with the plan that will be approved is a plan that isn't quite as detailed as what we've given you tonight because it's the overview for the state. But the voting would then be that with this would be what we presented tonight, all three options would be viable for parents to choose.
And will there be the positive test plan posted for public comment before the vote? If a teacher or student tests positive, what the response plan is?
I actually believe it's already in the Danville Area School District summary that will be, it's in a draft form and will be looked at for the state. If you look in that plan, that would be posted probably a little bit later tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any other comments, please?
All right, one more try for Mark Thomas. Mark, can you comment at this point?
Isn't,
Well, seems like he's having difficulties, so that is all at this point.
in the audience, are there anyone who'd like to make a comment?
Will there be a public comment session next week before all this stuff is discussed?
Yeah, there's always a public comment session at the beginning and at the end. The one at the beginning is reserved for only agenda items, and the one at the end is open.
Okay.
Next week you will.
I'm sorry, I do need your name and address.
Louis Bennett, 864 Campbelltown Hill Road, Danville.
Thank you.
Yep.
That is why we presented tonight, so people could kind of digest it, look at things on the website, send in some questions on the email that we've created, and it gives the community some opportunity for input and review. So, you know, that was our purpose, is to make sure that the community, the parents, and others are able to have some information ahead of time.
All right, thank you.
Any other public comment?
Dr. Boyle, I was just reading what was sent to me by one of the attorneys in the office relative to governor's orders today. And he's going back to no gatherings more than 250, but no gatherings of more than 25 indoors. So I'm just saying that because you're going to have a board meeting. I don't want people to get, you know, all of a sudden people are showing up, and we're going to take a look at that tomorrow and let you know, because if that's the case, you're going to have to account for it. Clearly, you have more than 25 people in here tonight.
Right, what we will do at that time is go virtual.
Okay. Just wanted everybody to be aware we didn't plan it that way. The governor decided to make it that way.
Barbecue.
Yeah, but it's still only allowed 25 people. Oh, 200 outside. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Romana Stender. I'll just yell. I have 3 kids. Romana Stender, 1563 Summary Road. So I have a child entering 1st grade. So when will we know when they have to wear masks? Like, will that be decided by next week? Like, because you said if they're 6 feet apart in the classroom, what if they're not? Like, what if they're 5 feet? Is she required to wear one all day?
No, they're not going to be required to wear them all day. That, you know, we do have, to the greatest extent possible, as someone referred to the fact that the American Academy of Pediatrics put in the idea of 3 to 5 feet. We will have some allowances with that, but try to maintain the 6 feet at all times.
Okay, then what about for recess? Are they going to have recess outside?
They'll be outside
Will they
as
have
much
to
as
wear a mask
possible.
though?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They'll be playing, running.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
But we are going to address the number of students on the playground at a time. So that will change. We won't have as many classes out there at the same time, but it does, you know, open up for a little more space.
And I do believe the pediatrician number was like 67,000 of them who were in agreement with their association's funding. I think it's 67,000. So it's quite a significant number of pediatricians.
Correct, and that, on the summary, the link is there for that document.
Excuse me, Ricky, are we still open for public comment? We have hands raised.
Yes.
Mr. Tittman, go ahead and give your name and address.
Gregory Tittman, 910 Bloom Road, Danville, PA. I know this came up earlier. I just wanted for a point of clarification to start off. I know that students that attend the Danville Cyber School are allowed to participate with Danville athletics and other extracurricular programs like band and drama. For those parents that decide to send their student to a charter school that's not the district's charter school, will those students be permitted to participate in Danville School District extracurriculars?
No, they're not.
I think that might be important information for parents to know just when making the decision. That was the first comment I had. The next comment I had is the people are throwing out the American Academy for Pediatrics. The World Health Organization has also recently said that there's now growing concerns that the virus is aerosolized and airborne. So even with masks or no masks, recirculated air creates a new potential for exposure through the eyes. So I was wondering if there's been any sort of, if the maintenance department has done any sort of looking at the circulation systems, buildings, especially the high school, which is a pretty big building, and those interior classrooms have no windows. What has been done to look at recirculation of air?
Okay, do you have any other comments? Because we want to give you your full 3 minutes.
Sure. Yeah, the other comment I have is, you bring up all these options that parents have for their students. My biggest concern, I'll just readily admit here in public comment that I am a teacher within the district. And I guess my biggest concern with the mask issue, if I'm walking around my classroom and have to walk by a student or want to provide them any sort of assistance one-on-one like we tend to do in instruction, and that student's not wearing a mask, the mask isn't necessarily, me wearing a mask isn't necessarily for my protection, but for the students. So if the students are not wearing one because they're apart and that's the directive you want to come up with, I'm being potentially exposed by students at the high school. It's not just with 20 students in the homeroom, like a primary school teacher. I could potentially be exposed to upwards of 100 students a day. And my biggest concern is contracting the virus and bringing it home to my kid or my family or a relative of mine. And so, I have an issue with this idea that the masks won't be required for my own personal health and the health of my family that I love. And that's my biggest concern. And so you bring up we can't force students to wear masks, but we're providing options that they don't have to be in the building if they don't want their kids to wear masks. And so I'm not 100% sure why we can't put a directive in place that says masks must be worn if there are alternatives for parents and students that...
I'm sorry, you're at 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Ken, do you want to address the ventilation, please?
Okay, hey, this is Ken Burkage talking. To answer your questions on the HVAC system, we looked into putting MERV 14 filters throughout the school. It would cost the school about $150,000 to do that. Right now we have MERV 8 filters in, and we're getting a new filter. It's going to increase our cost about 2 or 3%. It's actually treated with a chemical. It's just MERV 14, from what I understand, is what it's like a hospital grade filter. We're putting them in all 4 schools in the nurse's office. We thought the nurse's area would be the most important to do that. And it's just not financially feasible to change all the filters. You cannot open the windows. In these schools, some of them will not open. The Liberty Valley is not even safe to open. But the way the HVAC systems are designed, they already bring in a certain percentage of outside air. If you're going to open the windows, it changes the humidity levels and everything else, and it'll get extremely uncomfortable inside these buildings. So as far as the HVAC system is concerned, we must keep the windows closed. As far as the filters, I've already checked into the difference, and it's about 9 times the cost of what we have. And even then, there's no guarantee. It's going to cycle the air, but there's no guarantee that you're not going to pass through somebody's aerosol germs or something as you're walking down the hallway. But that's the best we can do at this point.
Thank you. Great, let me just correct myself. I've been told that outside cyber schools parents can request that their students attend our extracurricular activities, but there is a cost to that cyber school if that's what the choice would be.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe it has to be an activity that's not offered by the cyber school, correct?
That is correct. So if they don't have a football team, then they get to participate, they need to pay. And usually you get into these things, you know, the soccer school will argue the cost factor with the district, and that could be worked out. But yes, they can participate if you want to change several years ago in that regard.
In theory, if they have an art club and we have an art club.
They don't get to come to our club. But as you know, and having been in education and House Counsel for the SBA, it's very hard for the cyber charter schools to compete with the caliber and the quality of the education that is here, because Danville is a top performing school. And it's going to be very difficult for them to match their curriculum or the quality of your teachers. Yes, and that's a given.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, we have a Brian Bighart. Go ahead and state your name and address after you unmute.
Hi, Angie Bighart, 4 Farmall Hill Lane, Danville. Our question is about the co-op work program with high school students. Our son recently had a meeting with his guidance counselor to work out his schedule, and he was set for a work co-op that he worked hard for over the summer and last year. So we were just wondering what the status of that was, because we heard that possibly those co-op programs could be canceled.
That's your only question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we've been discussing it, and we haven't made a final decision. We will look at it on a case-by-case basis, though.
Okay, can I ask what the reasoning would be, why to cancel it?
Well, it would depend on what it is. I'm not really keen on letting any students go into a hospital for a co-op. All right, so that's why I'm saying it's case-by-case basis.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
We do have one more. But I believe this gentleman spoke previously. How does that work?
That's okay.
All right, Mr. Nelson, go ahead and give your name and address.
22 Wodenshire Lane. I guess it was more of a clarification on the mask that I had mentioned earlier. The policy in the AP reflects that evidence mounts that we should have universal face coverings, and that there are exceptions to wearing face masks. So I guess I'm a little bit surprised that we're talking about a policy where kids won't be wearing face masks in school.
No, our policy will be that students do wear face masks, as long as they, as long as they can't social distance.
So if they're in the hallway, for instance, then that would be different. They'd be expected to wear a mask, with the exception of those who developmentally wouldn't be able to.
Correct. And on the buses, that's another area that we'll have expectation that all students wear masks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments?
There are no more Zoom comments.
Any more from the public?
One quick reminder, please encourage everybody we know to take that survey by 3:30 next Monday. Okay, one important takeaway, more participation, more robust turnout for that. It's very helpful.
On the parent survey question 2 on the website, is asking you to select all school buildings that apply to your household, but they're only able to select one, so that could just be looked at.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I opened it. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.